Well, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. No, we're going to start this with a preamble. Of course, this is the third day of our thing we're going to go over all week, which are our favorite RPG mechanics. Some that you may have heard of, some that you might need to be reminded of. We're just going to go over a ton of them. I put out like an armchair poll in Absolute Tabletop and of course Critical Hit Publishing's Facebook groups, and some people responded with a number of them. So I have a list and I've barely touched it. So today I apologize, but I'm going to burn through a ton of them. So some of you may try to respond to some of the things, and I may end up actually moving on past it. So I apologize for that. I'm going to preamble just a little bit here so that others can get the notification and jump on board to chat if they want to. Let's just say what's up, say good morning, whatever, get their phones, get their computers set up. So in this preamble the other day, I ended up showing some dice that were like oddly shaped, gauntlets, potions, rods, daggers, shields, and things like that. And they're called poly hero dice. They are thematic dice. So far, Poly Hero has been doing Kickstarters, and what is available for purchase right now, not Kickstarter, are the hey, what's up, guys? Ricker, Foolish Kiwi, Alex C, Vincent, Janny. I'm sure Azalo's probably going to pop in there. Fat Ninja DM, everybody. The dice are the wizard dice and the warrior dice are already available in their store. The rogue set is coming out, and then as they gear up for each Kickstarter, they ask people to vote on the next set, whether it's going to be like priests or the faithful or something like that, something to that nature. They might even do like a druidic set or whatever they vote on. And then within each of those sets, they have a limited number of colors, usually between 6 to 10. Maybe 2 or 3 of those sets are translucent in color. And then, of course, during the Kickstarter, everyone gets to choose, pick and choose some of their favorite colors. So they have a host of colors that they already want, but then they come up with some other ones there. And then within the Kickstarter, and of course, for purchase, they have some unique dice. Like, for example, I have a 2-sided die. It's basically a spell book, and it's just you just flip it over, and it says 1 on one side and a 2 on the other side. It's kind of cool. The story type Rory's story dice are really cool. The pictures can some people who are very thematic may find the iconography a little bit childish, but they're absolutely great. And please look up the board game that Rory's Story Dice has created to go with it, which is a very adult themed storyboard. Hey everybody, good morning. Everybody's saying good morning because it's morning for me, not necessarily morning for you guys. I know Scott Poe, it's like 3 in the morning or something. It's crazy. Vince says it is interesting to try to create stories with those dice. I'm a huge fan of brainstorming based on random input. Also a good idea of random magic, the gathering cards, or random packs from Hearthstone. I absolutely agree. Sometimes we need to knock loose the cobwebs. Pound of dice. Magic the Gathering cards are excellent. I'm a bit surprised, or maybe they need motivation, that Wizards of the Coast, which owns Magic the Gathering, hasn't yet divorced the cards from the card and the artwork from the game itself. Yes, they have for free like PDFs based on playing your role-playing game in some of their Magic Gathering settings, but I would love just a set of cards with the artwork on it, right? Just a little bit of a little hint of story and a ton of flavorful cards. I think that would be sweet. And then, of course, because the Magic the Gathering cards have a theme unto themselves, whether it's like vampires or dragons or dinosaurs or jungles or frozen wastes or fallen kingdoms or and so on, steampunk or whatever the case may be, ancient wars or battles. I'm surprised that they just they could just release, 60 to 80 card packs of just artwork that you can use, whether it's, creatures. I mean, they already own the artwork. It's crazy. Okay. Okay, I preambled, guys. It's enough time, so because I'll get distracted by you guys easily. Squirrel. So, yeah, Egypt was named the Amoket setting involved Egypt. That's what Deadman, the storyteller, is saying. It's great, and Vince is also bringing up Dixit, if I'm pronouncing it correct. Dixit. It's a great game. It was even Spiel des Jahres. I'm butchering the German there, which means game of the year here in Germany. Is based upon just great art and how you describe it. There's an older game made back in the 90s called Everway. Robin D. Laws, I believe, produced it. I could be wrong on that. Everway was a diceless game, and it was based on. Oh, I've got the cards right in front. I pulled a bunch of my stuff up. Anyway, it was a diceless game based on tarot cards. Let's see if I can get this into like. Oh shoot, I think it's backwards. Anyway, it was based on tarot cards, and how you pulled them, you could have them up or down. So I know this is backwards here, but this card says dragon, and on one side it says cunning, the other side it says blind fury. So on the bottom here it says cunning, and if it's flipped over it says blind fury. So this was kind of like known as a randomizer, as a randomizer for adjudicating what was going on, and each card had a positive and a negative, and when you flip the card over, however it was facing you, when you flip the card over based on whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, and then you described or your actions thereof. And then they had a stack of about 200 pieces of art that you could use in the game to describe as for flashbacks or part of your background, or NPCs you were encountering, or monsters you were going after, or things in the environment and stuff like that. It was really great. There are a ton of games that use cards as randomizers, and talking about randomizers, we talk about dice and dice pools because we're going to get into that. Using cards as randomizers, strangely enough, is actually pretty good. The reason why cards make for a great randomizer is because as a game master or player, or in the course of play, or as chosen by the group in session 0, you can modify your deck to correspond with whatever it is that the group has decided. So, for example, if I could do a little plug here, Critical Hit Publishing, we have available critical hit cards, critical fumble cards, and we also have chaos magic card decks. You can order those cards, and they will, you order a deck of cards, and they're you just get them in the mail, and you can use them. Now you can use them as is, the whole deck of cards, but the cool thing is you can take these cards, for example, let's say you don't want them in your game, you take them out, and now the randomizer has changed, right? You can remove, if you want to play a less, let's say you have you get the critical hit deck, you can remove the cards that are far more lethal if you want to play more of a high magic, less lethal environment, or you can create 2 or 3 separate decks based on, hey, I'm playing a priest, so this is my random deck for a priest, whereas this might be my random deck for, say, a magical, arcane caster or something like that. And then maybe you might even have you could even create a third deck for like druidic influences for nature versus another deck for those who are using high-tech gadgets or something, and you could have only maybe 10 cards for a randomizer for what may happen, and some of those cards could be good or bad. Anyway, decks of cards are good. Playing cards are a great way to use. I believe there's I don't know the name of it. I apologize. I would love to plug it. There's a role-playing game out there that uses a standard deck of cards. Hearts, diamonds, clubs, spades, the numbers, the kings, the jacks, and everything. And you pull yourself a, you pull yourself a 5 cards or whatever it is, 7 cards in your hand, and they offer you benefits in the game. And because of those benefits, it may do, for example, let's say hearts has to deal with social interactions, and you may have 3 hearts in your hand. And although your character is very good at battle, you may want to you now have benefits to engage in social interaction. And so the cards enable you to, or push you towards maybe wanting to solve problems using, say, hearts, because maybe that social interaction. Diamonds may have to do with wealth. Spades may have to do with work or physical activity or skill checks, whereas clubs may have to do with battle. And so Vincent says Castle Falkenstein is a game based on card draws instead of dice. And he also said there are some Wild West RPGs that use this. And I think it's a really good way to, for some GMs are, don't want to try to break the murder hoboism that some players may have. You can say, okay, here's we're playing with some regular playing cards. Boom, you draw some cards, and they go, oh, I drew some hearts. That's for social interaction. I got a 5 of hearts and a 10 of diamonds or something like that. I'm going to use these cards instead, which might benefit my character, even though maybe normally my character isn't very good at social interactions or something. Yeah, Azala says Deadlands and Deadlands Hell on Earth use cards. Deadlands is a great game as well. All right, so I haven't even started to get into it. Record says something, as it's Wednesday, yeah, mechanics for world building. I'd submit the clans as classes from Vampire, gives the player archetypes like fighter, mage, etc. to play, but also gives them ties to the world. Absolutely. When it comes to world building, there are plenty of games that do excellent jobs in world building. So let's dive right into that. And of course, today is Wednesday, World Building Wednesday. Thank you for reminding me. But I knew we would diverge off of that. Okay, so there are some games that have pretty interesting world building, whether it comes from players or the GM or both, whether it's in game or before game, such as Fate. I have a game called Zas Urkala. There's an excellent world building gaming thing called Microscope, etc. Vince even talks about I did world building in Houses of the Blooded. It is a game about nobles, and each character can build up his or her own lands and define each tie to him or herself. Yesterday, we brought up the idea of 13th Age, and 13th Age has something called icons, and icons kind of embody like a combination of like alignment, purpose, drives, and also move the story. For example, in 13th Age, the icons are real physical beings. They are powerful individuals or entities that exist in the world. It's a medieval world, and they exist in the game. For example, there's a list of them called the icons names are things like the Archmage, the Crusader, the Diabolus, the Dwarf King, the Elf Queen, the Emperor, the Great Gold Worm, the High Druid, the Lich King, the Orc Lord, the Priestess, the Prince of Shadows, the Three, the High Lord Magus or Magus, the Blood Knight, the Dark Mistress, the Longbeard Thane, the Triumvirate, the High King, the Platinum Dragon, the Untamed, the Deathless One, so on and so forth, the Savage Lord, the Grand Oracle. Now, each of them has a name, and they have a drive, a purpose. For example, the Archmage has preserved the Empire for centuries and created astonishing new lands. He's also threatened the fabric of reality with experiments you'd have to be brilliant or hugely arrogant to attempt. The Dwarf King is a Lord of Forge, the dwarves' new homeland beneath the mountains. He'd love to reclaim the dwarven home lost to war against the Dark Elves and the creatures of the deeps. But now the Empire is stumbling. The dwarves find themselves manning the mountain walls that shield the Empire from the orcs and monsters of the north. And so in 13th Age, those icons are like beings that you can align yourself with or be opposed to. And if you pick an alignment with one of those icons, that may put you in opposition to another alignment. Blades in the Dark does this as well. Blades in the Dark, you play gang members, and your gang, in the course of creating your gang, you pick those you are aligned with, those you are neutral with, and those you are antagonists with when you start the game. And so therefore it's not really an alignment system like my character must act this way, but it is like it is a method of saying, hey, I am aligned with this entity, and for good or bad. You may not agree with the person, the icon that you picked. They may tell you or give you orders or instructions to do something that you may be opposed to, and so you may come in conflict with your own icon. You might be very loyal to your icon, and by virtue of your icon existing, you may go on missions and such. And it's a great way to push the action forward, right? When a GM is stuck with something to do, you go on a mission. Your icon tells you to do this thing, and you go. Vincent says, not very well thought through, but it's great. Oh, he says, so you could say, I got a lot of mountains in my land, so I can create more icons and can create weapons or armor. But sadly, most resources were only used to create buildings or simple items. Exactly. And just by virtue of the icons, it allows players to pick how they're motivated. It can pick how the world is motivated around them. You can also pick the other icons to be motivated against them. So basically, with essentially a simple word, the Dwarf King, the Emperor, the Lich King, the Orc, the Savage Lord, you already have stories rolling in the head. Scott Post says, my icons are slightly changed based on my players. The dwarves are in the library age, for example. And of course, we take those, we draw our own inspiration, and then we change them thereof. Vincent says, in Blades, you also choose from a list of one NPC as an ally and one as an enemy as well. Oh, you were talking about Houses of the Blooded. Sorry about that, Vince. Yeah, I didn't. So, I distracted myself because I didn't look up. I forgot that you mentioned that up in the chat. Yeah, earlier in the chat. Yeah, the Houses of the Blooded says it's not very well thought out, but great ideas to build on. Which is exactly what you need. You really want great ideas to build off of. Talking about motivations and things that are created in games. We really are trying to but pick out mechanics that can be ported over to any game you choose. In your game world, you can have icons in your world, whether they're powerful deities, powerful individuals, individuals that exist. Also, we mentioned in White Wolf has a great idea of doing this. The idea of icons also creates antagonists, which creates drama. If there's no conflict, there's no drama. In which case, really, there's no action. White Wolf is notorious for this, and I love it. Let's see. I got to flash my my spine that's beat up. My original Vampire the Masquerade game. It's all like the pages are about to fall out. The binding here, the glue is coming loose. But anyway, in Vampire. The original Vampire the Masquerade and the other White Wolf games, they have clans. And in Vampire, they have clans. In Mage, they have things. And in each book they do. Werewolf the Apocalypse, you have your tribe. And so by coming from a particular clan, you are associated with the machinations of your clan, and you get benefits for that because you have certain powers and disciplines. It also puts you in opposition to other clans for specific reasons. And just like in real life, whether you're associated with where you live geographically, the people you work with, gang members you hang out with, you're associated with role-playing groups or something, right? You personally, your personality, you also feel like an individual. Like, don't associate me with them, but at the same time, you want to belong with a group, and someone can look at you and associate you with other people. Not to go down a dark path, but I'm African American, and some people who are of limited minds associate me with a generalization, a stereotype, and what have you, for good or bad. And that creates conflict, which creates drama, which is awesome and great in role-playing games. Yeah, it's Zala says, really, I can't stand elves. They get a lot of favoritism, right? And so therefore, yeah, because there's always blood elves, dark elves, pale elves, winter elves, wood elves, all that kind of stuff. No one ever does that with the dwarves, right? They don't get as much love because maybe they're just half as tall. Yeah, Alex. Yeah, my book has lasted longer than the 5e player's handbook, with the bindings starting to split, and it's been over 20 years, 25 years or something. Vin says oftentimes they are just better humans, in touch with nature, beautiful, exotic, long living, which is lame. Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Everyone should hate elves. It's storytelling or whatever. Yeah. Scott Poe says, Vincent, actually the players are mainly elves, one gypsy-esque human. So elves freely roam while humans are largely homebodies, protect civilization, encroaching from the Feywild. That's always the case, right? It's the mysterious elves. And you know what? Part of that is it's like we play role-playing games and create before role-playing games existed. They're creators, whether they're writers or artists or something, and we want to be beautiful, we want to be exotic. I think that's where it comes from. Nobody really desires to be an orc, like right off the bat. Maybe like that's their third or fifth choice down the line. Most people want to be like tall and beautiful and powerful and mysterious and magical and brilliant and right. Except you could always throw it back in their face and say, you know what, the Lord of the Rings trilogy could have been ended in 5 minutes if Elrond had just pushed what's his name with the ring right into the thing. But no, it's like when things got hard, the elves must leave, we gotta go, yeah, we got another appointment. I'm picking with him, but the idea of being allied with something and having that also being allied with that being in opposition to you makes great drama. So yeah, Jared P says players usually don't like that sort of prejudice just because of their unwitting choices of race, background, family, or class. It makes things great when the party is a weird mix. Yeah, Vincent says, I love playing half orcs, but mainly because they are tragic and have a certain stereotype you can work with and not ignore. So having a growing anger inside while suppressing it, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, it's the idea of like, I've even heard of players being upset that their dragonborn character has unwitting prejudice against them, being referred to as lizard folk or something, which I think would happen. It's crazy. So yeah, something also that I like. Alexi, I've played a Flynn Ranger that simply wants to be left alone. Azala talks about half orcs, trolls, etc. These are my favorites. Yeah, because they are tragic. They can't. They don't have the option of getting over because they look good or sound good or people think they're exotic, right? Most people think of them as monsters, and it's becoming the hero despite the tragic people you're associated with. But there's something else that I love as a mechanic in the White Wolf games that really impresses me, and that is opposed statistics. Opposed statistics, and what I mean by that is that in Mage there's paradox, quintessence, and paradox. In Vampire there's humanity and your blood pool. In Werewolf the Apocalypse there's gnosis and rage. And in a number of their games, they have an opposed statistic, and an opposed statistic basically means that you're trying to remain in balance with something, with some kind of a form, and as one statistic rises, it has a negative influence on the other statistic. Yet, using both of those numerical values in a game is important. Prue says, I never use alignment. I encourage the players to come up with an NPC or two that they're in a relationship with for some reason, etc. Yeah, the idea of there are many systems that do not use, and they have their own unique alignment system. For example, Torchbearer. Torchbearer has an alignment system where I believe they're called drives. I'm probably mistaken on that, but whatever the case may be, in Torchbearer, it's a drive. It's why do you do something? It's not what do you do, but why do you do it? So you pick a number of those motivations. For example, you could I picked up a random list. So you can be things like because I don't want to be like my mother, to avenge someone I love, to atone for my sins, because I can, because great power is awesome and I want more, because I have been thrown into this madness and I don't want to die. And those are those kind of things where you have people who have motivations for drives for why they do something, is great. And it's when you can answer the question because I, and then answer the rest of that sentence, it makes a lot more sense. Like Prue says, drives makes much more sense to me. Vincent says, so if you increase one, the other goes down. Exactly. When you have these opposed statistics, for example, humanity and blood pool, in vampire, as your humanity goes down, it reduces your ability to resist things like going into rage or fleeing from things that make you fearful, like fire or religious symbols or things like that. Your blood pool is used to power your abilities, but when your blood pool reduces, you cannot resist the hunger. So, and then your humanity goes up when you resist your drive to consume blood, but you need blood to gain your power. So it's like an opposed statistic. An example would be you could create a opposed statistic such as empathy and apathy, for example. I'm just making this up in my head, right? Just off the top of my head. So if you have a game, you can make up your own mechanic system where you have empathy and apathy. So empathy allows you to interact with people. You know, if people are lying to you, you can convince people to be on your side. But apathy would allow you to do things like hurt people, torture them, beat them, intimidate them. And so if your empathy goes up, maybe your apathy goes down. So you're not very good at intimidating people because you know what it feels like. As opposed to going the other direction, you might be very forthright or bold or even brutal. But knowing if someone's lying to you or whether you understand whether you can feel the emotional intent is probably blind to you because you're such a brutal person. That's an example. There are other things too. White Wolf, again, I'm bringing it up again. I'll move past it. The vampire, they have nature and demeanor. Nature is like what you are inside. It's the thing that drives you, and then demeanor is how you act outwardly. And there are plenty of natures and demeanors you can pick from, and you pick them from the same list. Alex C says sounds like a good match. Antipathy and empathy, right? There's like they're kind of opposed to each other. You could come up with something else. Vincent says you could also make something like sensitive and hardened. While sensitive increases your perception of magic, but decreases your defense, hardened does the opposite. Exactly. Like you and having opposed statistics can mitigate the and I'm going back to the murder hoboism, right? Like someone's like, I want to be hardened. I don't want my character to be sensitive. But if you need your sensitivity to detect things like magic, emotions, things moving around you, then that player character is like, whoa, well, if I'm too hardened, I'm not going to notice those things, which might be a drawback to my survival, right? Alex C even says, instead of the foreboding pain in the ass alignment system, right? There's many systems. For example, nature and demeanor. You might have a nature, let's say you have caregiver and let's say director. Right. So caregiver sounds like, oh, I want to take care of people. And a director is like, I'm in charge now. Well, inwardly, you might be a caregiver, but outwardly you act like a director. Or the opposite, you may be inwardly you're a director, like you really want things done the way I want to, but outwardly you act like a caregiver, like you care about other people and stuff. And you gain benefits from that. If so, their quote unquote nature and demeanor is like their alignment system. If you play within that, you gain bonus. You are able to recover your willpower, which gives you bonuses to succeed on things. There's nothing saying you have to follow it, but there's a desire to follow your nature and or demeanor to regain your willpower so that you are far more successful in other things. Blades in the Dark is something similar. They have vices. You regain your benefits if you indulge in your vices, whether it's like gambling, sexual conquests, engaging in carousing, physical activities, and things like that, criminal activities, even things like drugs and such. So if you engage in your vices, you regain your benefits, but the act of engaging in your vices is a bad thing, right? What are some other motivating factors we have in some of these games? So let's move on from there. The other day we also brought up. Back in the chat, Vince says there are often times games where you can only go up. You can only go up, and there is no trade-off. The simple fact that when you are alert all the time to notice danger, you will be exhausted from it all the time. He also says, or when you've got very sharp senses, it's easier to blind or deafen you because they are more sensitive. Which oftentimes we don't think of having very high statistics as being a drawback. But there are some games that apply that. Like, hey, I'm so sensitive to things that I'm always kept up. I'm always alert. I can never sleep or something. You know what I mean? Where most games are just like, yo, you got a plus 15 bonus, and then it stops right there. Rickard says, to be honest, I actually like the old school version of alignments. They made sense and were tied to the world. I've never had a problem with alignment, but it just seems to be that one thing that gets everybody arguing. So I never use it simply because just to keep the arguments down. I never had a problem with it because it was never a straitjacket, and I think people view it as such. Foolish Kiwi says, I like old school alignments too, but I could write a college thesis on how many people don't understand that lawful means adhering to personal philosophy. We're not going down the alignment track because eventually it'll be squirrel. So getting off of hypersensitivity, exhausting. There's something else. Talking about exhaustion, let's talk about that. There are different games that apply exhaustion and encumbrance. Oh man, encumbrance is that one thing that that really, really goes bad. Alex C says, derp, waffle stupid, derp. So anyway, encumbrance is one of these things that's really been exhaustion, encumbrance, breaking equipment. These are some of those things that tend to get overlooked a lot because it's very hard how to use them. Stupid. Zala says stupid should be definitely on the alignment list. Deadman Storyteller says Eclipse Phase uses motivations which give bonuses and possibility of recovering moxie. Yeah, Eclipse Phase has a number of lists, and you basically pick one of your motivations and put a plus or minus beside it. A plus means you're for it, that drives you towards it, and a minus means you're against it. And just by mixing them, whether you are a transhumanist, you're a recoverist, whether you want to be a perfectionist or something like that, and that basically drives your character. And I think that's really great. What's really cool, we brought up bennies, and I never really went into what bennies were. Eclipse Phase bennies, it is a percentile system. Here's the unique thing. Listen to this. When you use a Benny and when you roll percentile, you can roll any number between, in Eclipse Phase, it's 00, which is zeros, to 99, or using standard percentile, 1 through 100, right? When you use a Benny, you can flip the numbers you roll. So instead of rolling a 92, you can flip it to 29. Eclipse Phase, you want to roll high but not over. You want to roll up but don't bust, right? It's like a gambling thing. If you have a 40% beam weapon skill and you fire a weapon, you want to roll to beat someone else's skill, you want to roll up to, but not over 40%. And so if you roll a 92, you failed, but if you spend your moxie, you can flip it to 29. And I think that's really cool. I like that. It's bizarre, but like flipping the dice, because if you roll a 44, it's no use. But you roll a 92, it really benefits you to spend moxie to get it to be 29. Encumbrance, Rickard says, I'm sorry, let me go back up. Poo says, isn't it Torchbearer that does stuff like that? I want to play that. Resource management under pressure. Rickard says, encumbrance, ammo tracking, and the like makes sense if you want to play a survival style game. Otherwise, they're just accounting mechanics. Vincent says, best encumbrance rules are in Blades. You simply choose how armed you want to look based on light, medium, or heavy load, and that defines how many items you can carry, but you can choose them later. That is great. Alex C says, rations, water accountability is good for survival too. Yeah, various games use encumbrance, survival, like Rickard says about tracking ammo if you want to be in that survival game. Survivalist, gritty, and it's a very fine line between pulling you into the game and being an accounting firm, right? I love the way Blades in the Dark is. It's very, when you do it, it makes a lot of sense. But basically, you choose how armed you are. And because you pick how armed you are, you don't have to pick what you're carrying. You can later on say, oh, no, I am carrying the set of keys, or I am carrying a dagger in my back, in my boot or something, without having to pick it ahead of time. That's really cool. Let me tell you the encumbrance system for Torchbearer. And follow me on this one, right? The Torchbearer encumbrance system is incredibly explicit and of that incredibly simple. Items can be worn or carried, and your body or bags can only carry a certain number of things. So you can wear one head-worn thing on your head. You can wear one thing around your neck. You can wear a couple things on your chest. If you're wearing a backpack on your chest, you can't also be wearing plate mail. A backpack can carry more things than a sack. The order you write things down in your backpack slots is the order they've been put into your bag. The top item is at the top. If your bag gets a hole at the bottom item falls out first. I'm reading this from a blog post. This seems super obvious, but it is such a departure from how most games handle gear and encumbrance. I know some people find it restrictive, but this mechanic is entirely in line with the realism of the game. It makes so much sense. And it goes on to say, another part of this dungeon crawling is hard and you might have a bad time. Realism is the grind. You enter the dungeon delving adventure feeling nice and fresh, capital F. Pretty soon, though, you end up hungry and thirsty, exhausted, angry, sick, and maybe even injured, afraid, or dead. When things go wrong, you're unable to properly rest. The GM can impose or advance your conditions in that list I read you. Each condition has its own mechanical penalties. For example, you can only get rid of your fear if you've already dealt with being hungry, thirsty, and angry. Let's go back into the chat. Vincent says, I don't like having point buy drawbacks. I'm colorblind and can't light a fire, but I can hit one kill Baylors. I can one hit kill Baylors. The problem with sometimes talking about GURPS and the drawbacks is that, as I mentioned the other day, we were talking about GM intrusions, that some players want the points for the drawbacks. They just don't want to include the drawbacks in the game, right? Or when the GM brings up the drawbacks. Or the opposite, you may have a GM that always brings up your drawbacks instead of making them randomly apparent in the game. Proof says, Azalo says in the Conan RPG has tokens that characters can spend. For a thief character, they can spend one and produce a dagger, even if they've been searched and stripped. I like that. I kind of like that a lot. What's another game that deals with survival and encumbrance and things? The Cryfoth game that I did a review on has modified a fifth edition exhaustion. A fifth edition has exhaustion too, which I believe isn't used very often when you're doing things. There's a game called Zasser Kala that I have, in which case you can only you have to spend you gather resources and then you spend those resources to recover your hits. And you could do that where you can say, okay, I have 6 units or 6 points of, yeah, Alex C saying 1 to 6 levels, 6 equals death. In 5th edition exhaustion, that is the issue. As you advance in each level of exhaustion, it brings you closer to death, no matter how many hit points, no matter how strong your character is, no matter what level your character is, which I like. And I've put into my cinematic environs. Some players hate that. If they're 20th level character, they don't want to die in 6 turns, right? Well, 6 turns if they fail their exhaustion saves or resistances, and they don't do anything about it. Foolish Kiwi says it'd be neat to have a simplified encumbrance system like that. Have a few different sizes of bag, maybe a magic semi hammer space one, and then you have slots. Daggers 1 slot, a great axe is 3 slots. Exactly. Vincent says Dungeon World has a very simple mechanics for survival and encumbrance, which just has a number of items you can carry, and travel length is measured in rations you need to get there. Prue says, oh yeah, I just don't want to play with people whose goal is to break the game, which some people, that's like, if that's your intention, to break the game or to play the GM, you're not playing the game, you're trying to play the GM through intimidation because of your knowledge of rules or something like that, then you're just an a-hole. Like there's nothing wrong with the game. That's something wrong with the person. And they should rethink why they're playing the game, or at least understand why they're playing. The one thing in the black hack can be used in, like, instead of tracking every little thing, especially when it comes to survivalist games and gathering items, whether it's like rusted daggers, or you're playing in a post-apocalyptic world where you're using things like obsidian or stone or wood or bone or bronze items. There's in the black hack, there's something called a depletion die. And a depletion die is like, imagine starting out with a die 20 or a die 12. And the idea is this: every time you roll a 1 or a 2, the die reduces down to it reduces 1 step down. So you roll a die 12. If you roll a 1 or a 2, it reduces to a die 10. You roll it again whenever you use that item. If it's a die 10, if you roll a 1 or 2, it reduces down to a die 8, et cetera, et cetera. You could apply that to how much damage the weapon does. So let's say you have a polearm that's a die 10 polearm, and whenever you roll a 1 or a 2 when you're swinging it and hit someone, if you roll a 1 or a 2, it reduces down to a D8. You could do it that way, or you could just do it at the end of, say, some kind of conflict or battle or something, or you've gone through a storm, or you've traveled every 3 days or something. Roll your depletion die for your equipment, and then you just roll a depletion die. Maybe you are heavily encumbered and you have 5 items, or let's say 6 items, and then you roll a depletion die. Your backpack is a D8. If you roll a 1 or a 2, you lose an item, right? You could do something like that. But depletion die could be used for just about anything when it comes to your rations or searching for things. Depletion dice could be used for playing exhaustion. Hey, you've traveled for 3 days. Roll your character has a depletion of a die 12. If you roll a 1 or 2, it goes down to a die 10, etc. That's one way to do depletion as well. The chat is talking very much point. Vincent says, I always feel with point buy character creation that I need to optimize somewhat so my character feels competent in what he does. I always feel like I would fall behind when I choose cool options. Yeah. When it comes to character creation, we often, the big 3 are with character creation is either randomly rolling everything, randomly rolling your stats or something. Okay. What did you write down? Alex C says, how about the creature size damage die size increases, such as a longsword is D8? Oh, I get it. Okay, so you're saying like the size of the the die increases based on you swinging on the size of the creature, which I love as a house rule, right? So you're saying a longsword is a D8, but against a tiny creature, it is a die 12. Against a small creature, die 10. Against a medium, it's a die 8 as standard. Against a large creature, would be die 6. Against a huge creature, it would be die 4, and against a gargantuan creature, it would be die 3. I would absolutely play with that house rule. I think that's great. I think you actually summarized it quite nicely. It was not confusing at all, by the way. And that could also, there's no real benefit to having a larger or greater size in 5th edition. That would absolutely make it great, right? So you could be a tiny creature, and maybe being a tiny creature gives you advantage to dodge something, right? But maybe you have disadvantage to grapple or resist being grappled or pushed. Maybe like a huge or gigantic creature has advantage to push or shove or resist being pushed or shoved or grappled, and they also have the advantage of suffering less damage from those puny weapons, right? Kind of doesn't make sense the longsword can hack through a dragon with the same intention. Yes, I know there's hit points and all that kind of stuff, but that's a great house rule. I like that. Point buy system. So let's talk about character creation. We have point buy systems where everything you buy with points. There's also completely random, right? You pick a chart, you pick your stat, not pick. You go to a chart, you roll on a chart. You go to your stats, you roll some dice for your stats. But there's 3 other methods in character creation as well. There's Vincent says you got a weird video glitch for me, DBJ. I have up in front of me like the stream, and I'm not getting any like I don't know why that's happening. Maybe I have too many things open. Let's see if I can. I don't want to shut everything down, but I'm going to close some windows out maybe. Can I modify my... No, I don't know what's going on. Sorry, guys. I don't know if my audio is coming through clearly as well. I'm not getting that. No, I'm not getting it at all. It could be YouTube, because when I tried to upload this, I was trying to upload it before, and it took the audio is still fine. Okay. I'm presuming, I'm going to assume that they're recording this and the picture is still good. It's probably YouTube. Last night I was uploading the whole doobly-doo and all that kind of stuff, and I had to come back to it because they were saying they were going through some issues. So sorry about that, guys. I could try to refresh this, but I don't want to lose you because I'm already into the chat. I'm going to keep it as it is. I'm sorry. I'm going to keep it as it is. If I touch something, I'm going to piss it off, which I don't know. Everyone says that. So anyway, there's also 3 other methods for character creation, and I'm sure there's more. Is archetype. I'm calling them archetype, blocks, and lifepath. Someone brought up yesterday. Yeah, this Bruce is, yeah, it's fine. We'll survive. Exactly. Archetype is like, I'm going to say feng shui is like that. Vampire and like the White Wolf systems are kind of archetype. Archetypes are basically like the game already has set up for you like an 80% character, right? I am the two-fisted hero. I am the intelligent character. I'm the scholar. I am the acrobatic thief. I am the reporter. I am the wizard. I am the priest, or something like that, right? Alex says, by the way, DBJ, how often you jump into Discord? Honestly, not very often. It has nothing to do with my desire or not desire to jump in. It's that the reason that I don't jump into the Discord is because I really don't often do it, and I feel like if I jump in, I want to stay there. I broadcast this at 6 a.m. because it's before work, and I can guarantee I'll be here at 6 a.m. before work. After work, I never know when I'm going to do it. When I jump off of here, I do my doobly-doo, I upload everything, I get the audio in there, I get all my links and stuff, I get dressed, I get washed up, I go to work, and then I have no idea whether I'm getting off in 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. And so I can never promise when I do it. And then when I get off of work, my time's my family's time. So that's really what happens. When I get off work, like, the wife's home, we're going to eat, we're doing things. And if I'm sitting on a Discord and I'm a letter carrier here in the United States, I deliver the mail, I drive a truck. I can't be on my phone when I'm driving a truck. Like I listen to a ton of things, right? I listen to live plays, I listen to videos, I listen to podcasts. I listen to plenty of things, but I can't interact because then I'd be on my phone all the time. That's not because I don't want to be in a Discord. I'm often distraught that I'm not engaging in the Discord, honestly, because Jared Premont went through a lot of trouble to create it. To do it, he even called me a little kid because I'm old and I'm crotchety. But that being said, I think it's a great place. I will definitely try to carve out more time to be part of the Discord because you guys are very active in it. I do check it before I get online, so that's really why. I mean, I could lie, but whatever. Yeah, dead man. Yeah, you understand. It doesn't make it nice, but it's the truth, right? So archetype creation is kind of like, let's say you want to play a dark noir. You have a dark noir setting. You could create like a detective, the femme fatale, the reporter, the beat cop, the in Cthulhu you could have like the mad scholar or something. And then based on the character creation systems, like you can pick and choose little things to make your scholar a little bit different than another scholar. Vincent says creating character systems. He gives examples like point buy for Shadowrun, class based for D&D, hybrid system, which would be vampire. And a hybrid system for vampire would be like you pick your clan, which is kind of like your class, plus you spend points doing things, right? And then you have life paths, which is like Traveler. I'm going to add Cyberpunk has a hybrid system like a life path plus point buy system. And keyword based with fate and aspects. A keyword base is great too. There's also I would add in there one more character creation system, which would be blocks. I'm using maybe a bad analogy, but blocks would be like you pick Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition kind of seems like this, right? You pick a background, you pick a class, you pick a race, and then you go on. Cipher system is kind of like that, right? You're an adjective, noun, that verbs, right? You're a quick adjective. What is it? Glaive, which is like a fighter. That wants to hunt demons or something, right? I'm a fast. My brain's stopping. Okay, like I'm a agile pirate that steals gold or something. The adjective, noun, that verbs is kind of like a block building system where you get something by mixing and matching the adjective, noun, that verbs, if that makes sense. So you can actually have those things where you can have a difference in character creation, and the more limiting you make your character creation system, I find the more thematic your game will be. Feng Shui is like a 90% system, right? Where like if you play a maverick cop or a martial artist or a cyborg or a big bruiser, or an old master. If you play an old master, all you are is the old master. You have a few things you pick and choose, and you're ready to play. It's very quick, very easy to jump into, but you can't play an old master that has cybernetic systems unless you really, really, really change the system. If you play a martial artist, you can't really play a martial artist that is also a dark avenger, which is also a scrappy kid, right? You're playing archetypes that are from movies, and Feng Shui is very movie, just like Hong Kong Action Theater is another role-playing game that does something similar to it. Fate aspects. When it comes to Fate, Zas Urkala is another game that I have. The aspect creation system where is another thing that some people have a hard time wrapping their heads around. But essentially, it's like you use a framework of something that describes your character, and then when you use that, you get a bonus for it. Azala says, or you could have character creation like Fatal. Yeah, I don't want to have to use like alcohol, hand sanitizer when I'm trying to create my character, right? Wearing body prophylactics while I roll dice to make my character. Yeah, talk about scatological humor. Yeah, Alex says, I hope I don't get seizures from the glitch. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. We're almost hitting the hour point, so I'm sure. I hope this glitching goes away. I do hope that I'm using a different method of streaming, not slightly different. YouTube has 3 methods of streaming for me, and I'm using one of them. I'm hoping it's really just YouTube just messing around, and I hope it's not something permanent. Because I'm looking at myself and here's a little piece of lint that I'm seeing, and I'm not getting those glitch. The glitching really hurts my eyes. Sorry about that. Vincent says, I personally really like the life path idea from Traveler, but it has its problems. My problem with some life paths is a life path system that specifically has better options than others. I would prefer a life path system. That has random choices given the life path system, but all of the choices create parity when character creation. I don't like life path systems that are like, oh, you rolled and you missed education, you get less points, and then you roll higher and someone else rolls higher, and they're like, they get extra points because they were brilliant in school. It's just like, I get that, but I would prefer it to be like, you missed school, but you learned on the streets, and you stayed in school. You aren't streetwise, but you learned from great teachers, and then each of them gets the same number of points or just a different set of skills. Vincent's Burning Wheel has life paths, yep, and is less random. Twilight 2013 has the best character creation system of all the games I've played. You can create any background, no problem. Yeah, absolutely. We're getting to the end of this, but like one of the things that a character creation system that I find unique is this. I brought up Zas Urkala. Let's see if I can bring this. Never heard. Okay. Azal says Cyberpunk 2020's character creation can get really long depending on how old your character is. Yes. Cyberpunk 2020. Let's see if I can pull this out as well. Reprint of the original. I know it's backwards, and I know it's flickering for you guys, but Cyberpunk 2020 has itself a life path system, and the life path system. Let's see if we can get in here on this. There's some pictures here. Anyway, the life path system and deals with your family, some of the people you've grown up with, and it just guides you down a certain thing of maybe your character's more corporate than living on the streets and that kind of thing. This is a Zas Urkala. It's actually written here in this. Zas Urkala is like realistic Fallout, yeah, with real guns. Yeah, Zas Urkala has a weird but unique character creation system. Their character creation system is the idea of picking. You pick iconic words from a list. So, and then as you pick those words from a list, for example, let's say you are born from the mountains. So you start the game with having mountains as part of a description for your character. So whenever you're in the mountains, you get +1. And then as your character increases, you add words to that word mountain. So for example, let's say you are in the Three Peaks Mountains. So you get +1 when you're in mountains, and then you gain +2 if you're in the Three Peaks Mountains. And then when your character increases from there, let's say you are in the hold of the Dwarven King. So when you're in the Three Peaks Mountains within the hold of the Dwarven King, you get +3, and it goes on and on and on. So it increases up to like +5 or something. So as you add another descriptor to your skills, your character, there's no statistics in the game. You have basically 5 words, and as you add an adjective or descriptor to your word, you gain +1 whenever that descriptor is being used in the game. It's kind of bizarre. So anyway, we've hit the hour mark. Sorry about the glitching on your end. I don't know. There's no way for me to resume this. I'm going to resume it on my end because I figure I might get knocked out. So you guys, everybody out there, have a good one. I'm running a panel for the Con+1, which is a online convention, November 3rd. My panel, of course, will be about cinematic environs itself, and we're just going to talk about that. Those who join in also maybe donate to Child's Play, which is donating games to children that are in hospitals and such. So I'm going to run a panel for that. So check out Con+1. That's down in the doobly-doo as well. All you guys out there, sorry about the glitching and everything. I'm going to try to redo this right now. If it knocks you guys out, sorry. So anyway, guys, if you're ready to go ahead, fine. It's no, you're not being rude or anything. Everyone out there, have a good day. I'm going to reset this and